Ooh, I've been meaning to talk about these failed betrothals for a while now. Some are pretty wild, make for good what-if fanfiction scenarios. Marriages have always been a vital part of nobility climbing the ranks amongst themselves, and it's no different in this fantasy inspired by the Middle Ages. Since a lot of them were arranged by the parents or liege lords, many didn't come to fruition, and it usually led to some serious consequences. Tywin Lannister always had high hopes for his firstborn son, Jaime. He was supposed to carry the torch of all the hard work Tywin put in during his life to make House Lannister the powerful and feared family that it was at the start of the story. Jaime was everything a prideful lord could want in a son in his teenage years. He was knighted at a young age and one of the most skilled fighters in the Seven Kingdoms. Finding a beneficial marriage alliance for him would be easy. His renowned good looks only made it easier. The girl Tywin found for him was Lysa Tully, Cat's younger sister. The daughter of Lord Hoster Tully was definitely a suitable match. The Tullys ruled over the Riverlands, a rich and populous kingdom that shared a border with the Lannisters over in the Westerlands. They would make for a powerful team. The fathers even went as far as to have Jaime spend a couple weeks at their castle Riverrun, seated next to Lysa during meals. He never did pay much attention to her, however. Tywin would end up having his heir taken from him when the Mad King named Jaime to his Kingsguard, just to spite his old friend. The whole no lands, titles, or wives part about this new position sounded great to Jaime though. He only cared for Cersei and had no interest in ruling. His mind was a little simpler to that of his father's. Fighting was all he lived for, so he never did get married, and Lysa would end up with the much older Lord Jon Arryn. Her wedding was a double ceremony with her sister Cat, who became Ned's wife, but she was real close to becoming tied to his older brother, Brandon Stark. Brandon and Cat were betrothed to marry for a while, and it was a match Catelyn was happy about. She knew having an ally in the north was great for her family, and all she cared about at the time was being a dutiful lady for her father. Brandon went out and got killed right before the wedding because of his outburst when his little sister Lyanna disappeared with Rhaegar Targaryen. So Cat was given to the next heir in line, Ned. Fathers in this primitive world don't really care much about their children's happiness, but this wedding worked out great for Cat and Ned. They got lucky and ended up being fond of each other. And we all know the story about how Lyanna was betrothed to marry Robert before her disappearance and subsequent death. I won't bore you with going over the story of how Robert lost the love of his life again.
She was my sister. This is where she belongs.
She belonged with me.
Because of the events of Robert's rebellion, Tywin finally got what the Mad King couldn't provide, the hand of the most powerful man in the realm for his daughter Cersei. The Mad King rudely turned down his previous proposal to have Cersei marry the Prince Rhaegar, but now she got the full-blown king. Tywin's plans were very different to the ones that his deceased wife had for their children long ago. When the twins were children, their mother Joanna Lannister was in talks with her old friend that was the Princess of Dorne to join their families. Cersei could have married Oberyn Martell or Jaime Elia, but Tywin squashed these ideas after Joanna died giving birth to Tyrion. Tywin instead offered Tyrion for Elia, which was seen as an insult because of his notorious deformity. An Oberyn and Cersei relationship might be the wildest match out of all the characters. They would just end up killing each other. Things were never really the same after Robert's rebellion, especially for the Martells and the people of Dorne. First, Rhaegar dishonored his wife Elia Martell by leaving her for Lyanna. Then they were forced to take part in the war because the Mad King held Elia hostage at King's Landing with her children. And then finally, after all the Dornish blood was spilled on the battlefield in a fight they wanted no part in, the rebels brutally killed Elia and her young children under Tywin Lannister's orders. Vengeance for their princess and her two young ones was obviously in the air. So after Robert's coronation, the first thing his Hand of the King, Jon Arryn, did was broker peace with the Martells. Cause it's not like Robert would ever set foot in an entire kingdom that called him usurper. Oberyn wanted to take back the throne for the Targaryens in another war that would put Viserys in power, but realistically they didn't stand a chance against the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. So Prince Daeron Martell played nice with Jon Arryn while he visited Dorne, while Oberyn went to visit the man who was looking after the last remnants of House Targaryen. The former Master-at-Arms in King's Landing, Sir Willem Darry, was protecting little Viserys and Daenerys and Braavos while they were in exile in Essos. Oberyn and Willem agreed on a secret marriage pact between the Martells and Targaryens, where Viserys would marry Prince Daeron's firstborn child, Arianne, and when the time was right, they would take back the Seven Kingdoms. Luckily for Arianne, Viserys got himself killed before they had the resources to make a move. Sam Tully was almost married off to the powerful Lord Paxter Redwind's daughter. He thinks back to this traumatizing experience when he visited the Redwind's Island in the Reach during the 4th book. The boy needs a bit of seasoning, that's all, his father had told Lord Redwind that night. But Redwind's fool rattled his rattle and replied, "Aye, a pinch of pepper, a few nice cloves, and an apple in his mouth." Thereafter, Lord Randall forbade Sam to eat apples so long as they remained beneath Paxter Redwind's roof. He had been seasick on their voyage home as well, but so relieved to be going that he almost welcomed the taste of vomit at the back of his throat. It was not until they were back at Hornhill that his mother told Sam that his father never meant for him to return. Horace was to come with us, in your place, whilst you remained on the Arbor as Lord Paxter's page and cupbearer. If you had pleased him, you would have been betrothed to his daughter. Sam could still recall the soft touch of his mother's hand as she washed the tears off his face with a bit of lace, dampened with her spit. "My poor Sam," she murmured. "My poor, poor Sam." One of the more interesting marriage betrothals that never came to be was Olenna Redwind's, before she married into the Tyrell family.
I wasn't originally meant to marry your grandfather Luther, you know. I was to be given to some Targaryen or other.
She was first betrothed to a Targaryen prince named Daeron Targaryen, 50 years before the start of the story, when the two were only 9 years old. Olenna only briefly mentions this part of her history, saying, "The Baratheons have always had some queer notions, to be sure. It comes from the Targaryen blood, I should think," she sniffed. "They tried to marry me to a Targaryen once, but I soon put an end to that. From the Maester's accounts, it was Daeron who called off the wedding. He was known to be more interested in guys. This generation of Targaryens were all a rebellious bunch. The children of Daenerys' great-grandfather all kinda did whatever they wanted. They must have taken notes from their father because Aegon V married for love, not a common occurrence in this age of marriage alliances. His firstborn son and heir, Prince Duncan Targaryen, was supposed to take Lord Lionel Baratheon's daughter as wife, which would have made her a future queen. But instead, Duncan fell in love with a common girl while traveling through the Riverlands. Even though Aegon married for love, he couldn't approve of his heir's choices. Aegon's queen was still a noblewoman. A common girl just couldn't be a queen. And putting aside his Baratheon lady would bring dishonor to her family. So he gave Duncan an ultimatum: either go along with his father's wishes or be stripped of his title of heir to the Iron Throne. Duncan chose love and married Jenny of Oldstones, a story many characters held dear and songs would be written about. This decision brought on Lord Lionel Baratheon's wrath, however. He rebelled against the king, naming himself Storm King. Things settled down after he was defeated in battle, and Aegon sent his daughter Rhaelle off to be married to Lionel's heir. They would be Robert and his brother's grandparents. Aegon's troubles weren't over. His other son, Jaehaerys, also broke his betrothal to a lady of House Tully to marry his own sister, Shaera. Aegon wanted to end the notorious Targaryen tradition of incestuous marriages, but Jaehaerys wouldn't let it die. Jaehaerys even forced his own children, the Mad King and Rhaella, to marry, in hopes of fulfilling a prophecy about a promised prince being born in their line. Shaera was previously betrothed to Luther Tyrell, the man that Olenna would eventually end up with.
Marrying a Targaryen was all the rage back then. But the moment I saw my intended, with his twitchy little ferret's face and ludicrous silver hair, I knew he wouldn't do.
We all saw how Sansa's hopes of becoming queen fell apart, with Joffrey turning out to be a crazed, spoiled brat. But the Lannisters even got in the way of Sansa marrying into the Tyrell family, something she very much looked forward to during her rough time at King's Landing. In the show, she was meant to marry Loras, but in the books, it was his older brother, the heir to Highgarden, Willis. Far more older than her, but an overall nice guy, who unfortunately suffered a leg injury during a joust with Oberyn in his youth that left him crippled. The Lannisters stopped this from happening by quickly marrying her off to Tyrion to secure the North's loyalty. One I almost forgot even happened was the agreement Cat made with Walder Frey for Arya to marry his youngest son, Elmer Frey. But with Robb royally messing up the agreement to also marry a Frey, it was called off. I think they gave the Frey Arya was supposed to marry a different name in the show.
And Arya will marry his son Waldron when they both come of age.
She won't be happy about that.
Marrying the King in the North and the Stark Princess was a huge deal for Walder, who sat by during his long life, watching his house be despised and looked down upon. For good reason, though. Little Elmer Frey broke down in tears after losing his princess. While hiding her identity in Harrenhal, Arya actually comes across this little whiner. She tells him she hopes his princess dies, not knowing he was supposed to marry her. There's a lot I'm sure I missed on this topic, either because I didn't find them worth talking about, or just because it slipped my mind. I guess that's what these comment sections are made for. Hope you guys enjoyed this one regardless. I'll see y'all soon with something else to talk about. Thanks for watching.